So very excited, guys, to bring you this special edition of White Widow Sports. Not a podcast, but something that we have really been looking forward. This is something that's kind of come about in recent days as we've been trying to get this together. Mary, I want to welcome you to the White Widow Sports channel. I can say that I've known you for a good number of years now, and I don't really think of you as an athlete. I would much rather Cam Scattaboo be in the frame that you're currently occupying. But welcome anyway. Tell our viewers about you, what you do, and why you're here today.
Well, first off, if we're going to take off the gloves, let me just go ahead and say, raise your hand if you played college athletics. I thought so. Okay, moving right along. You did not, did you?
I did some athletic stuff in college.
Okay, anyways. I think I was introducing myself. Hi, I'm Mary. I'm the wife of that one with the pennants behind him, Chris. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. So that's a fancy way of saying I have a license and I'm a therapist and I talk mental health all day long. And I specialize in work with trauma, but particularly autistic and ADHD individuals. And I have a lot of personal history with that stuff as well. And so I also love sports. So let's do an intersection of the two.
And Brian, I know this is a project very near and dear to your heart. This was something that you were very eager to make happen as quickly as possible. Tell us kind of why that is true for you and what kind of led to this.
Absolutely. So I have a son. He is 28 years old. You will hear me refer to him as Little Brian or Brian Jr. Um, Greatest thing that's ever happened to me, hands down. Both my boys love them. Can't say enough about them. They both, and the way this kind of fits in, both my boys played sports all the way growing up. Um, I coached both of them up until my youngest son got to middle school, and then it became more real. But Brian Jr. I have coached since the time he was 5, and I believe it started with soccer, and I've kept on until he finally got to where he said, "Okay, Dad, I've had enough." So um, with Down syndrome, which is what he has, he you get into a lot of the same characteristics of autism, and how to deal with that, and coaching special needs. I had autistic kids, I had Down syndrome kids, I had MS kids, I had multiple levels of challenges, and it really challenged me to how to become a better coach, and how to kind of get one on one with them, and what they need, which I think made me a better parent. It made me a better coach when I was coaching football. So that's just a little bit of background of kind of where I've been throughout my adult life.
Yeah. I guess I want to also add to that because I guess I slipped my mind because it's like, oh, I've lived with it for, how old is my brother? Math is hard. I think he's 33.
32, I think.
32? Born in, I don't know. Math is hard. I didn't go to school for math.
I didn't know this was
Um,
going to be a question, but all right. I didn't know we need to take notes on this.
so my brother, his name's Sam, and he was diagnosed with autism at the age of 3. So I'm 3 years his senior. So that's been a special part of my entire life. So yeah, this is obviously an important topic. I think, and we can take it so many different directions. But I think that
And
the intersection. Oh, go ahead.
can I interrupt 1 second? So I'm gonna introduce the podcast to Brian
Say his
Jr.
name and he appears. I
Yes,
believe
right there
Brian
he is.
Jr.
Hey!
Hey,
Hi.
Brian. Yep.
Not much.
What's going on, Brian?
He said what he's gonna be a little hard to hear because he's
I heard.
Brian, you gotta get right up on the microphone to talk to him.
What up?
What up?
We got the same thing.
Yeah.
All right.
I know. So obviously on camera now, everybody knows Brian is my brother. So this is my
Love you
nephew,
up.
Brian Jr. Love you too, buddy. I knew my brother before he was a dad. I've obviously known him since then. Having a son with Down syndrome didn't even really cross a lot of people's minds when they meet Brian, Brian Senior and Brian Junior. It's just not something that's really necessary to speak about. That's just his son, and no condition that any of his kids could have would make him love them any more, any less. And I can honestly say that my brother is not only a better, he spoke about being a better coach, being a better father. He's honestly just a better person because of his interactions that he's had with those that are deemed special needs. I mean, he's not lying when he says that Brian Jr. is the best thing that ever happened to him. Being a dad is the best transformation that you can have. And if you knew Brian before he was a dad and his priorities, you would all say a big amen to that because it was literally life altering, but in the best of ways.
Absolutely. So, uh, and with that, you get a lot of the stigmas. You know, when you go to the park, you get the looks and the, you know, oh bless his heart, all that kind of stuff. And really, you should not feel that way. You should, you know, just feel lucky and privileged that you got the time to meet them and be
Yeah.
around them because uh, Brian does not know any enemies. He only knows friendship. You know, if Chris and Mary were to come up here where I'm at, he'd just give them a big hug like he's known them his whole entire life. That's just who he is. And we should all feel so loving to each other as much as I know we get in our day to day, and I'm as bad as anybody is. I get mad very quickly. I'm probably the most aggressive driver with road rage. It's not even funny, but you know, Mary, you might be able, and you might have seen some of that lovingness that comes out with your patients and the people that you talk to.
Absolutely. I just, thinking about how you had said that, I think I mean, it echoes my dad. My dad is kind of always says the same thing. And then I've always talked about, my brother is the best thing that's ever happened to me. I went into this field, originally because of him, fascination psychology, fascination and wanting to work with autistic populations, growing up with, different parks and rec communities and just around others, whether it's autism or Down syndrome or, wheelchair bound and things like that. And so just that was the driving force. And then I kind of, you go into the field and you do all this learning. And there's so much stuff to learn. And then you kind of, I don't know, I got involved in some other type of work. And so now that I've done private practice, it's like all rushed back to me and it's really cool and rewarding. But how we segued it, and I don't know if this is too quick of a transition, but
Was
Brian, you had said two things that I was like, oh man, like that's exactly what I had down in like my little notes. Um, you said, your son helped you be a better coach. And then you said, they bring out the best in us and that it's like a privilege, right? Shifting from that pity to privilege and like the lessons that we can be taught from individuals. And when they're also involved in sports, oh my gosh, it gets so cool. So I think we started this conversation by me just like sending a screenshot to Chris going, hey, look, this like golfer dude
yeah.
is like autistic and he just like he did all these awesome things. And so I was reading up on that a little bit today, and I guess he gave a speech after he had won. And Brian, if you guys know more about this than I do, please jump in. But he's Australian. His name is Stephen Alderson, goes by Spuds. And he was the first ever autistic winner of the G4D tour, um, in a 9-shot margin. Um, but the story that he spoke about all of that was kind of like the journey he had to take to get where he is today. He encountered a ton of bullying. In fact, I was learning that he left traditional schooling at the age of 15, because of it. And so, just thinking about like how he could have just missed a complete opportunity. And I didn't look at his story of how he got into golf. I'm guessing that it probably saved his life in a lot of ways. But just when you think about somebody excelling in the sports, we know that it takes a lot. But when you also look at these other factors, they have to fight so much harder to get there. And it's wild. And it deserves a lot of respect.
And I think with autism more so than Down syndrome, with Down syndrome, you can see, there's physical things that you can see, and you know immediately before one word is spoken, you know they have Down syndrome, or like you said, if they're wheelchair bound, you know that he or she has physical limitations. With autism, some of the things that I've noticed with in coaching is you don't always see or know or pick up on those differences right off the bat. It's when you kind of get to know that person or you start talking to them, um, that they have autism, or they have, they don't want to be touched. They don't want that
Right.
physical contact. They don't want you in their personal space.
Right. And that's why, when we're looking at autism, we talk about it as a spectrum, and the research is changing so rapidly. I could drag you guys through it if you wanted to sit here for 4 hours while I get excited about my favorite thing. But I think, bringing it to the coaching aspect, there's this applies to so many different disabilities, but the concept of them being invisible, right? I think when we're looking at athletes and their awesome stories as a whole, we never know what one person is going through. But to add something like a developmental disability that is invisible on top of that makes it so much harder, especially when a lot of these kids we're learning now aren't getting identified, like some of them into their like late teens, adulthood lives, and how many opportunities did they miss out on because they weren't getting the appropriate supports. So I'm going to give a little bit of an example of like, Brian, I kind of want your feedback or your thoughts on this. But I've got a few younger clients that I work with, and one of them is a soccer player, and she's young, but it has been really hard for her to stay in sports. There's a lot of behavioral meltdowns. There's a lot of like dysregulation over different sensory stuff. There's different emotional dynamics that come up that, while isn't completely out of the blue, it's more than her peers. And so it takes a special coach and a special group of teammates to be understanding. And I hate that for her because, like, I don't know, there's just doesn't seem to be any accommodations in sports until we get to those spaces of like adaptive climbing, for example, or Special Olympics. It's like there's not a lot for the admissible
Well, I've
experiences that
noticed
people have.
that when I was coaching, we had some young people that came out, and they were really, really good at sports. They got the mechanics. They have that athletic gene, and they were so far superior to the other special needs. It just not superior, and they were like better in general, but just
They were locked
their
in.
their their level, their skill level, belonged on, they could easily have gone for a um your regular baseball team or your regular soccer team. And as a coach, it is your job really to pick up on what they can and cannot do, and
Mhm.
how can you tie that in, so you can't think of the X's and O's and you know you literally have to like change the aspect of the game, so that, like this young lady that you're talking about, does not lose interest and feels left out or excluded, or something like that, or even have the meltdowns. um
I
I
mean,
think
I was
you
just, okay,
go ahead.
sorry. Well, I was just thinking like as we were talking about this, it was kind of ironic because like I played soccer all levels. And in elementary school, I would get so emotionally charged and like the justice of it all, right?
Mhm.
Because nobody's brain's most like mine than my brother's, right? So there's shared traits across there in different capacities. And I remember my mom going, "If you can't calm down, you're gonna have to quit soccer." What do you mean? I'm enraged because this was unfair and somebody broke the rule or somebody broke the law of the game. So even just like that, like I tease my mom all the time. I was like, "Mom, you almost took soccer away from me because I was upset about something very valid, but you were just so mad it was concerning." I'm like, "I was passionate."
And there
Yeah.
really is a difference between passion and a true meltdown,
Mhm.
where you literally have to take that child off the field,
Right.
because they're a danger to themselves or a danger to one of the other players. And that's what that's why I said that made me a better coach when I was, doing more organized sports like football, because I could see, okay, this child may not be a good fit for defense. He may be a better fit for offense, and we talked about that on the podcast. When I played football, I was a defense. I had that react mentality where my brother Brad he's an offensive guy. He wants to know the everything that's going on with that particular play. So the same thing translates when you get into special needs.
Mhm.
It's just a little different. You have to gear your mind a little different in that, you've got to be able to spot that meltdown almost before it happens.
And I
Uh,
think that increased awareness, if given like the right coaching and group of people, like, oh
mhm,
man, the potential it could unlock. So like we knew that a lot of these experiences, the brain is picking up on more input from the environment, which is part of why meltdowns happen. But if you can like hone in on, like, say there's this kid that's locked in on a sport and they're so good, but if you can notice the patterns around them having a meltdown, I mean, this kind of concept's no different than like your sports psychologist on the sideline of an NFL team trying to
sure.
like talk to the kicker and be like, "Hey, man, you missed the last one. You're not going to miss this one." It's it's a touchy subject, um, but it's kind of that same idea of like, okay, if we can help this person recognize when it's happening, and then we can help teach them about their bodies because a lot of times they don't even know when it's happening. There's a disconnect there, so it's opportunity for a lot of cool community stuff.
And somebody that's been around it can actually spot it before that child or
Hmm.
before that person. You see it, almost feel it in their eyes that, okay, this is about to happen. Let me go ahead and take them out, give them a water break, bring in the next child or, and kinda give them, take them out of that environment that's kind of upsetting. Now, obviously, you're not gonna catch one or all of them, so
Right.
like you said, somebody bumps into you, they break the rules and, you're never gonna catch all of them because you can't anticipate that fast, but I think me coming from that defensive mindset, that react mindset, and then transitioning into a coach and then transitioning into a special needs coach, it kinda all brought it full circle and you can kinda see and you can't predict everything, but you can predict enough to where, okay, I need to get this child out of this environment. It's
Yeah.
bad, or I need to get this child away from this position even. Maybe
Mm.
not take them off the field, but, you know, in soccer, if you've got this child playing forward and where it is a lot more aggressive, you're trying to score that goal, you bring them back and not necessarily put them in as goalie because you don't want them just standing there, but maybe put them as a defensive back and kind of
Yeah.
where it's a little bit more chill, but they're still out on the field. You're not taking the game away from the person
Right.
because they obviously enjoy it, but you take them out of that situation. You just change the environment a little bit.
Yeah. I don't think I mentioned this to Chris and kind of coming up with ideas of just all the bazillion ways I could link this up with mental health. But one of them was kind of about like where are the gaps that we have for like integrating like sports with like this community of people. Like I'm just thinking of, in college athletics, there's all different kinds of laws on like making sure things are fair between like men and women's sports. In college academics, we have different policies to like, for example, I'll write letters advocating for a student to have access to additional test time or different types of notes. But I don't know if I've ever heard of anything on the field. Have you guys ever heard of anything like that? Like any kind of like we see, like what we give with academics and sports,
Well,
but
before I
for
bring Chris and Brad into this conversation a little bit more, but and I'm going to get off on a little bit of a tangent, and this does come from coaching, rec league football, where you don't see as many special needs kids. This is just, you know, you're dealing with a lot with parents. It's called we call it daddy ball. You know, there is no daddy ball in special when you get to the special needs that I'm
Mhm.
kind of referring to, you know, that may be done by your park and rec. they're you know,
That's
it
a
may
good
be
point.
put on by some other entity. There is no room for daddy ball in that kind of environment
Is it because it's so
where
cutthroat,
there
like
is.
the competition of it all? Like everybody's trying to get seen or get like playing at that higher level that they don't want to slow down?
Yeah, well, it's not even that. It's as a parent of little Johnny, I want little Johnny to be the quarterback, and he's going to be the captain of the football team. And why is he going to be this? Because I'm his parent. That's what I'm talking about. Is you
Okay.
get that
Mhm.
that mentality that he's going to be the best no matter what all the time. He's going to be the because I'm his mommy or I'm his daddy. Uh, with special needs, you don't see that. I think also education has a lot to do with it. You know, when I was growing up and back in the 80s, we did not like intertwine, I guess, in school, middle school, high school, and any even elementary school. We did not intertwine with the special needs students at that particular school. Sports, education, any of them, they were excluded from like just over off to the side. And I think as times have changed and education has changed, you're seeing a lot more, of them coming to the forefront. The internet has helped that tremendously.
Mhm.
Um, but I think it's education is, you know, I did not when my son was born, the doctor came into the room and said, your son has Down syndrome. I was like, okay. I, I don't is that a good thing? Is that a bad I don't know what that is. It now I think it's a wonderful thing. I would not change my son for anything in the world. I he is who he is because of Down syndrome. Down syndrome doesn't define him, if that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I'd
Um,
like to jump in there just
sure.
because a lot of times, and I've been corrected on this before. I think a lot of people are guilty of it, and maybe it's just semantics, and some people don't care. But I've been told there's like even going back to the golfer we talked about, there's a big difference in battling stigmas between saying the autistic golfer or the golfer with autism. You do not define him based off of what
Mm,
his diagnosis is. He's not an autistic golfer. He's a golfer that is able to perform at the level that he does despite also having the diagnosis of autism. It doesn't mean that he's less than. In a lot of ways it means that he's greater than, because he does things that other people can't do without the special needs label on it. And kind of like what you were just saying, as far as Brian Jr. goes, talking about not changing him. I might be able to get it. So I've got a tattoo here on my arm, and it is a non-for-profit organization called the Lucky Few. And
Mm.
it is started by two moms that met at a work conference that basically bonded over both of them having children with Downs, and they basically were sharing their stories of what it was like raising a child. And one of the big things that they shared was just this story of unconditional love, that the lucky few doesn't mean that they're lucky because they have Down syndrome. It's actually referring to the friends and family members of people with Down syndrome. We are the lucky ones for knowing that presence in our life, because I tell people all the time, Brian Jr. is the best of us. When I'm referring to our family, it just doesn't get any better than him. He's generous, he's kind, he's respectful, but above all, he's loving. He does not
Mhm.
know a stranger. He does not know an enemy, kind of like what you were saying. And a lot of that just is kind of like a reminder that I take, with myself. And so it's been very rewarding to me. And I think, Chris might want to speak on this as well. I'm sure Chris can actually speak on how rewarding it is to not only see the things that Mary is able to do with her brother, but also with some of her clients as well.
Yeah, they all speak very highly of her. I mean, she doesn't work exclusively with autistic clients, but a lot of them are on the spectrum. And I mean, a lot of times she'll have like some self doubt, but like it's weird from my perspective to see because they're always praising her, telling her she's maybe the best thing in their life, talking about their friends. She came up in a dentist appointment the other day, and they're like, wait, like, I know her." And so, like, yeah, a lot of people have written her letters and told her online, and even face to face, that, like, you know, I wouldn't have believed in myself like you didn't, and yeah, you pretty much changed me, and so yeah.
Well,
Is it
okay.
really that hard for you to believe that Mary could be the best thing that ever happened to somebody? I'm asking for a friend.
Oh, buddy boy. You
and
know, I
and real quick, Mary, I have some of those same letters, and I also have a degree. My degree is a little different than yours, but I'm going to tell you those letters from those kids that I coached, just like your patients that you see, probably mean more to you personally than that degree will ever mean.
absolutely. And I think, like, Brian, you and I probably have a lot in common in just the fact that, like, this is our normal. Like, being a part of these communities, it's our normal. I know, like, even to this day, I think Chris and I were just having a conversation the other day about, like, I had a memory of, I don't know, going to some event with my brother and just being around a lot of different types of people. And I think I was calling Chris out on, like, not knowing something within the disability community. And I was like, how do you not know that? Like, that's a thing people know. And he's like, what do you mean, Mary? Like, it's not normal. And I guess, like, I forget that. And so I think that it maybe makes me a little desensitized to the power of this work. But I wanted to go back real quick because I am a stickler for words to a degree. Brad was making a point regarding, like, in the communities we talk about it as, like, diagnosis first or diagnosis afterwards or whatever. And I think, especially, and it does depend, right? Each person has their own preference. And so what I would recommend any of us do is, like, just ask their preference. Like my brother, for example, he doesn't care. He is so indifferent. He doesn't care whether you say he's a person with autism or an autistic person. He doesn't care. I will say most of my adult clients really do care. They is within the concept of autism it to be autistic person because it encompasses every facet of their life. But there's arguments for both sides. I would say it used to be a lot different, but I think with more people on what we would call like lower support needs, so people that are like late identified, late diagnosed, those are usually the people that are wanting that terminology to come first. But that was my little annotation stickler point there. Um, but Chris, okay, you didn't necessarily answer Brad's question. You complimented me, which I appreciate, but I think he was asking, like, you know, from your perspective as an outsider, because I mean Brad's technically not a complete outsider.
Yeah.
Like when you're thinking of sports and you're thinking of, like, I don't know, the dynamic with Sam or the dynamic with any, I mean, you've coached too. So how do you think, or how have you noticed, like, even when you were coaching like football in college, like how did you notice that with some of the kids?
Let's rephrase that. I was coaching football while I was in college, not coaching college
That's
football.
true.
I don't know if it came off that way.
I might have.
I've just not been exposed to disability in sport that much. And so when you talk about your brother being indifferent to a lot of things, I said, how was he in the Special Olympics? Like, he hated the Special Olympics. He didn't want to be a part of
He
the
didn't
Special
even do it. No, he
Olympics.
bowled and he played softball, or we
And
played
knowing
softball
Sam,
together.
Sam is very fast. Sam is is like 130 pounds, and for someone that's actually not that physically active, he can run based on just his height and the lack of weight that he has. And in an athletic setting, uh, if he were to practice and get certain skills down, I wouldn't think nothing differently of him until he started talking and doing so. Like if we were playing a pickup game of football, he said nothing out loud and just ran decent routes at his speed and caught the ball. I wouldn't think anything different of it. And I guess he's my only real exposure to the
Is
world
he? What about
in
your
that
sister?
way.
It's a different. We're not
So
talking developmental disability, but we're talking, I'm expand. Sorry, I cut you off. I got excited
yeah,
with an
well, and as
idea.
far as Down syndrome and stuff goes, like I've mentioned this on I don't think it, I don't know if it made it to YouTube or not, but I was mentioning a movie called The Peanut Butter Falcon,
Mm,
and they alluded to the fact that like some of these kids with disabilities, in this case Down syndrome, he had like really some strength you couldn't really teach. He had some like natural strength. I don't know if that was a movie thing or if that's a real thing,
It
Brian. I
had
don't
to
know if
It's
be.
a
there's some
real
It was
thing.
a
natural
real
strength.
And
thing.
I know
I'll,
that
I'll tell
they,
you this: Brian Jr.
yeah,
Gives some pretty good hugs, but
yeah,
he doesn't understand how good they are. And so, obviously, when I left school after high school and I moved down to Statesboro to go to Georgia Southern, I never moved back home. Some
mhm,
of my visits are few and far between. Some years I get up to visit family more often than others. But the one person that always seems happier to see me than anybody else, and it's not anything wrong with Brian Sr., my parents, or anything like that. But Brian Jr. just has a way of making you feel welcome. Like you could have seen him yesterday and he would have acted like it was 5 years since last time he seen you just from the way that he greets you. And so he would do this thing. Now Brian, you saw him on camera. He's not
yeah,
a small man by any stretch of the imagination,
sure.
and he's actually lost weight from what he had gotten up to. But his move would he would come up and he would wrap his arms around my neck, which was fine,
Mhm.
but then he would try to like wrap his legs around me. So all of his weight would be on my neck. And I
Ooh,
would feel that for a good week and a half. So I'm like, all right, buddy, I love you too. Get down.
The
and
grip
well,
and like I
strength.
said, it's a combination of, just that unfiltered love, but also that uncapped strength. I mean, when you say he's strong as an ox, it is so fitting. I'd put him up against myself in the gym on any lift possible, and I'm betting on him to outlift me because he's grown man strong for real.
Yeah,
well, I guess
and
that's
I
just the thing is I don't know much outside of what the movies give me. And that particular movie, he picks someone up above his head, and I know that's not realistic, and throws him like 20 feet. I know that's not realistic. So I guess I was kind of pushing for this topic. Brian was kind of pushing for this topic. Mary had a lot to say on this topic, didn't know if she would say the right things. I think it's clear she is. And I was just hoping to get this out there and onto YouTube, social media, anywhere that it may end up, and it can educate me as much as anyone out there.
I would say, anybody that's in or the situation that Chris was in when he was in college and he was coaching at any level. It doesn't matter if it's 5 or 6 and it's football, or it's 8 or 9 with
10,
soccer.
11.
Any kind of level of coaching when you're dealing with kids, I would say to an upcoming coach, take the time and go volunteer. They're always wanting volunteers. And no matter
Yeah.
where you go, they want volunteers, whether it's for the Special Olympics and you're just handing out ribbon. But what I would say is really what helped me was go volunteer, be a basketball coach. The people that watch our podcast know I'm not a huge basketball guy. I don't watch the NBA, I don't watch the WNBA. Has nothing to do against women. It just I'm not a basketball fan. But I promise you, I have coached more basketball with special needs than I ever have watched basketball or played basketball for that matter. Um, and it's just it will give you like something so rewarding that you can take to other sports, it gives you a level of knowledge that you're not going to build at any university, any being out on the street, any work environment. It will give you it's rewarding in the fact that you're going to feel good, but you're going to gain so much knowledge, and it's just dealing with the people, whether it's dealing with the parent of a special needs or the special needs child themselves. I hands down, I would say that to anybody that wants to get into coaching, referee, any of that, go volunteer at your local center and be a part of that community, whether you know nothing about special needs. And Chris, kind of admitted he's really never had exposure to that environment. Um, but even right now, I would say, if you've got some free time, go volunteer. You will get so much enjoyment out of it just being around those kids and the attitude that they have towards life, there's nothing on the planet that's like that.
I was thinking about how like what is sports if not for like the raw emotion and like this has it in spades, right? Like all the highs and lows, it's just like this has it. I mean, it's like magnified. Yeah.
But believe it or not, it's more highs than
Yeah.
lows because they don't really there the in the way that it's run around here, there is no real losers in this. There's no win loss, and that's brings me back to the whole. There's no room for daddy ball in that. It's you know, I'm not a big fan of every child needs a participation trophy. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that, but I am a fan of every child should know what it's like to win. And that's what I feel like you get is with the special needs is every child, regardless, knows what it's like to win because they were out there on that court. They were out there on that field and they yes, they're very proud of their ribbons and I could go get Brian. I've got bags and bags and bags of ribbons and medals and trophies and my whole living room is filled with this. Um, but it instills confidence and it will give you the confidence to start up conversations that you would not normally start up. And I would say I know Mary deals with this every day, so she kind of it's really her profession. But I know Brad doesn't necessarily, Chris doesn't necessarily, but I know Brad has been around, Brian and obviously he's come to games with me and he's supported Brian throughout his life, but I really think it would help in day-to-day just interactions. You may go to Walmart or to the grocery store or wherever, just your day-to-day interactions. You see how they treat people and you immediately say, "Man, was my day really that bad that I have to be just wearing my butt on my sleeve all day long?" So, it like I said, I'm a big fan. I think every coach should have to go through a special needs program. And really, I would suggest everybody go and volunteer and kinda be a part of that. Just leave the whole mommy daddy ball at home. That there's no room for it.
That would be a really cool requirement. I don't know if that's even anything that's in like because didn't Brad and Chris like didn't you guys take you both took a coaching class in undergrad, right?
I think it's just
I,
me.
oh, I thought you
Yeah, I
both
did.
did. I thought
I
you.
took
Oh,
some
I made it
sports
up in my head.
classes, but I wasn't a sports major, so I didn't have the same one.
Ah,
But
well, I love that idea, Brian. I think it should be a requirement because I mean the other thing too is like if you're learning about those experiences, then that's only going to help you coaching all populations, right? Again, going back to like the Georgia Southern had a sports psychology master's program that didn't accept me, her, but it was super small, so we'll let it slide. But like their whole premise, of course, is about like getting into the head of the athlete and like how do we make sure that like the aspects of confidence and like mental well-being impacts physical well-being and why can you run faster on this day than that day. um, but we only enhance that when we're working with people that are already having to go up against more hurdles because then you start paying attention to like the small things like
Mhm.
how does the crowd, well, we know this I guess, but like how does the crowd impact, right? We know teams already do that, they practice, they increase the intensity of their environment, but there's other stuff too, like I don't know, thinking autistic dynamic specifically, for me, it would be like the fabric of the jersey. Does it make me want to die? If it does, we're gonna not play our best. Or something like mindfulness, like coaches might be like, visualize yourself with the ball, visualize yourself making that catch. Well, for someone that has a different brain, that might be really hard. But if you walk them through that steps, you build that imagery slower and with more vivid detail. That's not only going to help them get you to where you want them to be, but it's going to help everybody.
Absolutely.
So,
and just to kind of put a bow on that, I mean, we've hit on Brian talking about how his life has been not only enhanced but also enriched by the experiences that he's had. I think Mary, you'd probably agree that when you get to help anybody, it helps you as well. But there's got to be a certain level of reward that you feel within yourself to know that you helped somebody with special needs and you gave them the attention and the platform to be understood and aided in a way that some people might overlook, some people might not even be willing to attempt. So just I want to thank both of you guys for the actions that you guys have taken, for helping that community, for being a good father, for being a good coach, for being a good therapist, and just supporting those with disabilities, and even Chris. Just we don't talk a whole lot about what we do outside of the podcast, but Mary mentioned being in private practice, and Chris is also a part of that business. It's safe to say that they work as a pair in tandem with each other, and that's why they have the success that they do. You can't have one without the other. And so, Chris, even in supporting Mary, you're supporting those clients as well. So, thank you all for what you guys do.
Yep.
Man, well, you're welcome. Also, thank you for that. And it made it really hard for me to make a joke. I wanted to make a joke. Basically, you're saying that Chris and I are the tag team champions.
Oh,
So we might have to, if we're the unstoppable duo. I mean, you walked yourself into
I
that one.
I don't know
Well,
that y'all can claim that because y'all have not been married, you know, all that long compared to Brad and myself. We've been together for
Oh,
life.
it's gonna be like that.
Yeah,
look,
it's like that.
oh, we've been
So,
married longer.
Yeah, but not as long as they've been in it. What's what he's saying? We've
you
not
know,
been married for
so
30
we've
I'm
been
years.
brothers longer than y'all have been spouses. So,
there you
if you
go.
want to take my tag team championship and Chris's
That's
tag team
almost not true
championship,
either.
hang them above the ladder.
That's barely true, right? What's the age difference?
17 years,
17
We're,
years.
we're 16
Wait,
years.
wait, Brad, when were you born?
91,
But what month?
July of 1991.
Oh, and we started dating. Not wait, when are we gonna be 9? Because we're almost
Uh,
17 years of dating.
17 years, yeah.
We still
In
got to beat.
September.
Dang.
We still have that title.
I don't know. I think I need to
Just
rework
saying.
the math.
But I'm saying Brian has been my brother since Chris was 3 years old.
Yeah,
Exactly.
So y'all weren't dating at 3 years
See, this
old,
is
or certainly not
embarrassing.
married. So,
you don't know. Wait, yeah.
but I'm
We
just
were just
saying,
She
working
Chris
wasn't
and I
born.
towards
have been the
math.
tag team
She almost
champions.
wasn't born.
But if Chris wants to turn on me and side with Mary, we can put the titles up in a ladder match, and we'll do it that way.
I will lose.
But
Maybe.
But
Possibly.
I've enjoyed this, guys. I hope you guys watching have as well. Big thank you to Mary for coming on and dealing with the three
absolutely.
of us. She might be a glutton of punishment for doing that, but we appreciate you coming in and contributing. Let us know, guys, what you thought about this. Maybe personal experiences that you guys have had, whether it be family, friends, coaching, anything to do with the world of sports and special needs individuals and everything like that. We'd love to hear those stories. I certainly enjoy reading those types of comments. So anything that you guys have to say about that, we'd love to hear it. Make sure that you like, comment, subscribe, but also everybody welcome Mary to the channel. Show her appreciation. She didn't have to do this, but she so willingly and graciously did. So I'll thank you on behalf of us, but hopefully our supporters will as well.
Hey, Mary, where can they find you on social media on all the platforms?
Oh, I mean, it's a
Courageous
very slow
Intentions.
start. Yeah.
Plug yourself. Plug yourself.
Yeah.
Well, if I was prepared, we'll drop it in whatever the thing. It'll be listed below. But Mary Little, I'm assuming you guys could do that, right?
Yeah, I'll
Mary
put it
We
in
can
the
put
Little,
it in the
comment section.
description.
I'll put it
That's
in the
correct.
comment section at least.
yeah, courageous intentions. I'm more active on TikTok than anything else. I ramble about all things mental health because that's every day, right? So yeah, I'm on those places. Come check it out.
And before we get off here, Mary, I want to thank you. I thought it was a great conversation between the two
Yeah,
of us with a little sprinkle of Brad and Chris in there. Um,
small
but
doses.
That was a
I do want
sprinkle.
to thank you for
That was
coming on
my
the
sprinkle.
podcast. I do want to go ahead and give you the title of being the very first guest on the podcast. So nobody can ever take that title from you. That
Oh,
is
I am
yours
the
for life.
champion.
So,
we get
you
shit
can
to go with
boast all night to Chris now that you have that belt that nobody can take away from you.
Well, I heard
it.
that there was this other chick that showed up once and threw a 2-year-old tantrum. So
Ah,
are we sure that do I still get that title? I mean, quantity of time.
And
I
Brian Jr. has been on a few times. Yeah.
I was gonna say
Yeah,
maybe
Brian.
first invited guest. I don't know.
There you go. There you go.
I'll take it. Just
Um,
wanted to make it
I-
fair.
and one more thing, I'm going to kind of throw you on the spot. You may not have
Cool.
it. Hopefully you do. If somebody is struggling, is there a hotline they can call or something that you may know of, some way to reach out for help?
So one of the basic ways is if all else fails, 911, of course. But there is a new version of that specifically for mental health, and that's 988. You can dial it from any line, and theoretically, it's supposed to work in terms of connecting you to crisis support services. You can also text that number. So, like if you don't want to call it, you can also text 988, and you'll get to talk to someone 24/7, get you some crisis support. Even if it's just you're having a really bad panic attack, right? Why go through it alone? Reach out to those supports. They're there. There's loads of other ones, but that's the easiest to remember is 988.
Or all else fails, I have Mary's personal cell number. Y'all
No,
just reach out to me and I'll start slinging that out.
Yeah.
$5 donation is all it takes.
guys,
When we get into our super chat era, Mary's phone is going to blow up. So
Yeah.
I'll block all of. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh man.
you can't block subscribers. That's
Uh,
not how this
Yeah.
game works.
Guys,
What
this
have I-
has been great fun. Like Brad said, this has been an enjoyment to do, and Chris said it at the beginning that we've been looking forward to this for quite some time. Unless you guys have anything else.
That was it. Thank you again, Mary, and thank you everybody else.